Hello, and welcome to American Amnesia. I am your host, Cliff Garner, and bringing another episode here. I'm in a different room than usual, as I think you can see. Just trying different things. Gradually, little by little, I had to actually do some preparation to use this particular perch. I don't know if I like it or not, but I am kind of forced to use it by circumstances today. So, at any rate, I saw an article today that just really rather intrigued me, and I want to share this with you. And I haven't heard much about this, just little squibs and what have you. But I haven't heard much really about it until I read this article and a couple others that it's like, oh, wait a minute, this is heavy. And yes, it is, and I will provide the link for it. This is from theconservativetreehouse.com. And it was dated March 30th, 2017 by the writer. Apparently his name's Sundance. This is on the last refuge page, apparently. I'll provide the link for it. And this is connected to Breitbart. So, all you that think Breitbart is not news, too bad. Wake up. Better than CNN. It doesn't take much there. But Breitbart, I think, has actually been quite good. There are times that they've gotten fooled, but if you want to compare their record to CNN's, I think that they've held up rather well. Title of the article is called White House plays Nunes White House plays Nunes Trump card to expose staff leaker and call out Oversight Gang of 8. Okay. And I'll pretty much read it to you here. Many people were wondering why the White House was holding back on calling out Congressional Intelligence Oversight Gang of 8 regarding their political unwillingness to review the same executive intelligence previously reviewed by House Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes. Today, you just got the answer. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Katie Walsh was fired today, immediately following a New York Times report which outed two National Security Council members as the source for Devin Nunes' tip to review a specific batch of President Obama's executive intelligence. The transparent sequence of events reveals that Walsh was the source of the New York Times reporter Maggie Haberman's article. Walsh and Haberman are friends. And with the White House leaker now identified and fired, the White House challenges the Congressional Intelligence Committee leaders, 4 members of the Oversight Gang of 8, to come and review the Obama Intelligence Report. That review request paints Intel Committee Ranking Member Adam Schiff and Senate Intelligence Committee Vice Chair Senator Mark Warner into a corner. President Trump is now challenging the House and Senate Intel Committee heads to review the evidence of President Obama's surveillance. How can they refuse to see the truth without exposing their own political agenda? Well played, Team Trump. Well played. Here's the play. First, the leaker. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Katie Walsh, a top aide to President Donald Trump, is leaving his administration to work for an outside group supporting the president's agenda, 3 Republicans close to Trump said. Walsh was a close ally of White House Chiefs of Staff Reince Priebus, serving as his chief of staff when Priebus led the Republican National Committee. There's a connection, too. Katie Walsh was brought on specifically because President Trump's chief of staff, Reince Priebus, asked for her. Walsh was a never-Trumper during the 2016 primary. Now, fathom the renewed leverage influence President Trump and Bannon carries over Priebus. The article, written by Maggie Haberman, outlined 2 National Security Council members as the people who facilitated the intelligence information for Devin Nunes to review. We have a block quote here. Congressman Nunes has refused so far. The Congressman Nunes has refused to identify his sources, saying that he needed to protect them so others would feel safe coming to the committee with sensitive information. He disclosed the existence of the intelligence reports on March 22nd, and in his public comments, he has described his sources as whistleblowers trying to expose wrongdoing at great risk to themselves. Several current American officials identified the White House officials as Ezra Cohen Watnick, the Senior Director for Intelligence at the National Security Council, and Michael Ellis, a lawyer who works on national security issues at the White House Counsel's office and formerly worked on the staff of the House Intelligence Committee. You notice that? It says, right there, one paragraph at the very end, he disclosed the existence of the intelligence reports on March 22nd, and in his public comments, he has described his sources as whistleblowers trying to expose wrongdoing at great risk to themselves. And then they name them. Why would they do that? I mean, just so that's kind of blithe, you know. They're just kind of, well, they're risking their life and limb, and here's their names. By golly, why don't we give you their address while we're at it? Just amazing. Just amazing. To continue, still block quote. A White House spokesman declined to comment. Well, I guess so. Mr. Cohen Watnick is a former Defense Intelligence Agency official who was originally brought to the White House by Michael T. Flynn, the former National Security Advisor. The official said that this month, shortly after Mr. Trump wrote on Twitter about being wiretapped on the orders of President Barack Obama, Mr. Cohen Watnick began reviewing highly classified reports detailing the intercepted communications of foreign officials. Continue, blog quote. Officials said the reports consisted primarily of ambassadors and other foreign officials talking about how they were trying to develop contacts within Mr. Trump's family and inner circle in advance of his inauguration. The officials spoke on a condition of anonymity to describe the intelligence and avoid angering Mr. Cohen Watnick and Mr. Ellis. Officials say that Mr. Cohen Watnick has been reviewing the reports from his 4th floor office in the Eisenhower Executive Office Building, where the National Security Council is based. And his office number is blah, blah, blah. You can reach him at area code. You know, this is just hilarious. But continuing block quote, that the official's description of the intelligence is in line with Mr. Nunes' own characterization of the material, which he has said was not related to the Russia investigations when he disclosed its existence in a hastily arranged news conference. According to Mr. Nunes, he received a phone call from a source the night before and then rushed to meet the person on the grounds of the White House. He has explained the choice of location by saying that he needed access to a secure place where people with security clearances could legally view classified information, though such facilities can also be found in the Capitol building and at other locations across Washington. The next day, Mr. Nunes gave a brief news briefing at the Capitol and then returned to the White House to brief President Trump on the information. There you go. End block quote. Really remarkable. Just how it just really says who they are, what they did. Although they've come forward at great risk, and of course they're going to name them and say where they're at, all this other stuff. Just amazing that they would do something quite that tacky, really. There's no end to this nonsense. And the Flynn connection, I keep saying that I have the feeling that Flynn is really more of a creature of the Turk. Actually, not Turks, but Erdogan's administration. I think that that's my personal opinion. I think that he's probably in the pay of Erdogan, and that he's going to have to come clean because he's pretty well tainted by this, I think. I suspect that that's why he wants to be given immunity for any wrongdoing that he may have done, because I have the feeling that's where it is. I don't think it's Russia, to be honest. I haven't seen, even yet, anything really all that significant with Russia, even with Flynn. When they came out and said that what Flynn had done was not really that big a deal, I haven't seen anything to change my opinion on that. However, what I saw immediately, as soon as I saw the stuff pertaining to Turkey, that it seemed to me that he had crossed several lines with Erdogan. I have the feeling that's really where it's at, and I do believe that my guess is a reasonable one, I think, and especially considering the material that was there. I don't have it in front of me, otherwise I'd be kind of happy to go into it. I don't really like Erdogan anymore. I used to. Actually, I when I first got to Turkey back in that was January 13th, matter of fact, of 2008, when I arrived in Turkey, and didn't have much of an opinion of him to start with. Really didn't know what I was dealing with there, And once I started figuring it out after I'd been there a few months, actually I had mostly a pretty good impression of him. Although I also saw where he was kind of a sneaky character with trying to impose his religious beliefs on people, using a rather sneaky way of doing it. He was doing it little by little. For a lot of people say it was the frog in the kettle approach. I suppose that's pretty correct. But it was clear that he wasn't doing it for any liberal reasons, which a lot of people were thinking that was possibly the case. He did a smoking ban, for example. I think that was 2008 or maybe early 2009, and that a lot of liberals over here like that, and it's like you don't quite get it. He's doing this for his own religious reasons, not for concern with public health or anything of the sort. But even then, he was reasonably contained with that kind of I don't know, religious enthusiasm, I guess you'd say. But that he kind of went off the rails finally, right around the time of the Arab Spring. I suppose it was towards the end of 2010 that he was really kind of biting down a bit more. And then 2012 is when he shut down Taksim Square for protesting. He was getting daily protests from people that did not want to intervene in the civil war in Syria, and he was really pushing it hard, and the people were pushing back. And so what he did is he shut down Taksim Square, and he decided that he was going to destroy Gezi Park, and he was going to really what he did is he dug underneath the Taksim. He made some bus stops down there, some underground parking, and this and that. But he changed the whole configuration of the square. And he had plans of building a huge mosque somewhere on the area. There's been different plans that he's had, and one of the rumors is instead of knocking down Gezi Park and putting a mall in there, is to make one of the largest mosques in Turkey. Yeah. That was one of those things going around. Now, he does plan to put a mosque up somewhere in that area. I haven't really kept up on his plans, but there was talk of putting it further down from the square, closer to, what is that area? There's a lot of Kurdish people there. I can't think of it now. And also a lot of the transsexuals are strutting around over there. What is that? It's not Kushadasa. That's not even close. That's a beach town. What is? Oh, goodness. Kurtuluş? No. Kurtuluş is further over. Something else. I can't think of it now. Been gone too long. But at any rate, it was talking about putting it up over there, which is off the square area. But there's also been talk of him putting it up in the square. If he did put it up in the square and took up Gezi Park, it would be an enormous, and I do mean enormous, edifice. And it is entirely possible that he would do that yet. He was also going to tear down the Ataturk auditorium. There was an auditorium on the square site area that they had condemned. I don't know if they've torn it down yet or not. It was still standing when I left in 2014. And any rate, but he shut down that whole area, and what he was doing was that while he was doing all this work, that he was not allowing any protests on the square itself, and he stopped all the marches from going through and everything else. The only marches he was permitting was his own people, and that has been the case ever since. From that point on, that he was gassing and water cannoning protesters who would dare to go to Taksim. And Taksim's the heart of the city, and that's really the issue there. With the trade unionists, there were several of them that were murdered on May Day back in the 70s. That's the Grey Wolves were the organization that did the shooting. They're a part of the Deep State in Turkey, and they're a residual group of really terrorists that were armed as part of Operation Gladio, which included also Italy and I think Greece as well, and a couple other places. That they were armed. There were arms caches. There were caches of money and things like this that were available to them, and they were put in place to fight against communist groups that might rise up. And so during the 1970s, Turkey had a civil war. And it's kind of hard to get information on it. It was a very chaotic time. But basically what you had was all across Turkey and in Istanbul, it was from neighborhood to neighborhood, fighting between left-wing and right-wing militias that were fighting. I got a lot of information from a roommate I had who tried to kill me. He was a thief, and that's another story. But that these militias were fighting on a daily basis. They're shooting each other all the time. And where I was living in Haskell, there's the you had the docks there, and you had a lot of the ship workers were union, and so my area was more socialist leaning, and Taksim Square area was run by the Grey Wolves, and the Grey Wolves are connected to the MHP MHP party in Turkey. They're the nationalists. And there's reasons why Erdogan has gone to them and managed to get enough votes to become a dictator. At any rate, I'm way off base now, aren't I? But that's part of the mess over in Turkey, and that's part of the history there. Back to this. With Ezra Cohen-Watnick, the Senior Director for Intelligence of the National Security Council, and Michael Ellis, a lawyer who works on national security issues at the White House Counsel's Office, outed as the source of the information for Chairman Nunes, the entire media narrative of controversy collapses as a nothing burger. That's the word. I've been hearing that word popping up a little bit, but what they're disproving is the whole Russian narrative, and also they're showing that the hoopla generated by the MSM, the mainstream media, is nothing. Basically, they're inflating a non-issue. Both Ezra Cohen-Watnick and Michael Ellis are cleared and authorized to act on behalf of the President in such matters. The President's National Security Council has a responsibility to follow intelligence protocols to draw attentions to matters of compromise. Their notification of Intel Chairman Devin Nunes is following that protocol. So the administration action follows, with the long-sought White House leaker Katie Walsh identified and released, and actually fired, and probably going to have charges pressed against her. And the controversy of the Nunes leaker and nothing burger, the White House now moves forward with a brilliant request to the Intelligent Oversight Gang of 8 to come and review the aforementioned discovery of President Obama's surveillance. Oh my. The worm is turning. And they have a letter here. It's White House stationery, addressed March 30th, 2017, addressed to Representative Devin Nunes, Chairman, Representative Adam Schiff, ranking member of the U.S. House of Representatives, Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, Capitol Visitor Center, HVC 304, U.S. Capitol Building, Washington, D.C., 2515. 20515, actually. Dear Chairman Nunes and Ranking Member Schiff, in the ordinary course of business, National Security Council staff discovered documents that we believe are responsive to your March 15, 2017 letter to intelligence agencies seeking documents documents necessary to determine whether information collected on U.S. persons was mishandled and leaked. In light of the ranking member's public requests and the ongoing House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence investigation, we would like to make these documents available for his inspection. Given the sensitivity of the documents, lawyers well-versed in handling highly classified information and national security issues are available to facilitate the inspection of the documents. 1, to ensure the proper handling of the documents, very important there, and 2, to protect extremely sensitive intelligence sources and methods. The White House Counsel's Office is committed to facilitating this review in a way that ensures that proper procedures are followed to protect these sources and methods. In light of recent disclosures regarding possible inappropriate accumulation or dissemination of classified information, e.g., the comments of former Deputy Assistant of Defense Evelyn Farkas on MSNBC on March 2nd, 2017. Our hope is that the committee will investigate the following questions. 1. Was the intelligence contained in these documents properly gathered? 2. Was the intelligence gathered and disseminated in conformity with appropriate minimization and masking protocols? 3. Was there any improper unmasking or distribution of intelligence? 4. To the extent that U.S. citizens were subject to such surveillance, were civil liberties violated? And 5. Was the intelligence Dr. Farkas referred to in her MSNBC interview provided to members of Congress or their staff? If so, were the proper protocols observed in transmitting such information? Was such information stored properly after the disclosure? A lot of people underestimate how important that her revelations are, and how serious of an issue this has become. This is why Obama is extremely quiet right now, because he is, he's responsible. The White House remains committed to cooperating with the committee. The White House Counsel's Office has maximum scheduling flexibility to facilitate a joint review by the chairman and ranking member. Respectfully submitted, Donald F. McGahn II. And it says down here, Chairman Richard Burr, Vice Chairman Mark Warner, U.S. Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. And here, let me go back to the article. I can. There it goes. And here's a tweet from Jennifer Jacobs. It says, the White House letter said lawyers versed in handling highly classified information will facilitate congressional leaders' viewing of docs. All right, so once ranking member Adam Schiff and committee vice chair Senator Mark Warner review the intelligence information, they will no longer be able to claim President Trump was not under political surveillance by former President Obama. The information is also available to other oversight members of the Gang of Eight: Paul Ryan, Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, and Chuck Schumer. The most visible and vocal Democrat opposition to the White House is now painted into a corner. And they have a nice little Trump tweet that says, he who knows when he can fight and when he cannot will be victorious. Sun Tzu, as you would pronounce it, but as my friends in China would say, Sun Tzu. Yeah, good old Sun Tzu. So it looks like the worm is turning on this, and that before long it won't be that. They will not be able to shield Obama much longer, and sooner or later things are going to come crashing down on Hillary. So it's an interesting little turn of events. Now, to return to what I was saying about Turkey, During the Civil War, there was the Gray Wolves, and there were the communist and socialist, the left-wing militias that were fighting each other. The Gray Wolves are still around, by the way, and they are still connected to the MHP, and they're this is their their little signal for who they are. A lot of them used to wear Fu Manchus, and that was because it would be the sign of the wolf. This goes into the Erdogan myth in Turkish or Turkic, I should say, mythology and folklore, and this also played into some of the nationalist rattlings, I guess, against Erdogan that were going on up until pretty much about the time in which he actually did confront the deep state and co-opted it. And that's the thing. What we're seeing right now is the deep state rising up. This happened in America a few times. It happened with Nixon, and they made sure that he went on. Basically, they downplay the rumors. Oh well, he wasn't going to mobilize any troops and blah blah blah. I don't know about that so much. I know that there were rumors of it in '74 when I was over there, and that there was reports during that time and then later that he was actually possibly going to try to mobilize the military, or at least some of the military, and declare martial law, at least in Washington D.C., and hold on to power. That is something that made like the back pages of the papers and stuff. I guess Arthur Schlesinger was one of the people that claims to have had knowledge about it, and I remember there was a general, and I can't remember what his name was. And he wrote a couple books and conspiracy theories and stuff. And I think he died late 80s, early 90s. I think it was early 90s. And I got his book, but there's never really been a full accounting of what had happened. But supposedly this general was the one that made there was a battalion or two. He made them stand down, and there's really not a whole lot of reason not to believe it, because he didn't have anything to gain by keeping it as quiet as he did. You know, there's I don't know. It just. He was trying to avoid the spotlight. He wasn't trying to draw it to himself. That was the thing about the general there, and I can't think of his name. I couldn't tell you his name if I saw it even. It's been so long since I read the book, and I got it somewhere, but by golly, I can't find it right now. You had that during Nixon. You had oh goodness. Well, you had what Obama's been doing. This has been probably one of the most blatant uses of the deep state I've ever seen. And it's like he's almost indiscreet into the way he did it, which I think says something about his panic. I have the funny feeling that there's a lot of illegality that this administration has been involved in that they don't want to have see the light of day. I have the feeling it won't. And the reason why I have the feeling it won't is that I have the feeling, first of all, that President Trump has a little bit more respect for the office than Obama did, and that he would be willing to to cover his sins, Obama's, to preserve respect for the office. And because I think that that's what he's trying to do, is try to restore that, the honor that was attached to it. And it's been really dragged through the mud with between Obama and Bush 2 and Clinton. I think those three have just been atrocious as far as it goes. I've tried to like all three of them, and it's like even Bush. I voted for Bush. I was convinced of certain aspects of the internationalist, globalist kind of ideas. And I thought maybe they were actually going to try to make them work. But when I went overseas, I saw that they weren't doing that at all. By the time I got to Turkey, it was like, it was very clear to me, talking to people and meeting people from Iraq, particularly, that told me that he was not trying to make that work. It was really rather letting it flounder as a failed state. It was actually what they wanted to do. And I see no good from that. If you're going to take out a person like Saddam Hussein, you should leave him in better shape. They had no intention of doing that, from what I'm getting. That they would rather leave it, the whole area just a pure mess of foundering and violence and mayhem, lack of government, lack of decency, just hate. You wouldn't believe some of the things I heard from people. You don't do that to people. There's more value to human life than that. So, at any rate, but the Grey Wolves actually produced Mehmet Aliaka, actually is how his last name was pronounced. That GH is silent, or the G with a little curly Q on top in Turkish. He was a member of the Grey Wolves. He was one of the right-wing militiamen, and he was a particularly violent guy, from what I understand. And that he was the man that who was recruited by the Bulgarian Secret Service with the encouragement from the Russian GRU and the NKVD both or KGB to go in and shoot the Pope John Paul I. And that's where he came from, was this civil war that was going on in Turkey for those years. And the Grey Wolves are now working with Erdogan. One of the things that Erdogan is doing, and you're not going to hear too much about it over here. It's a wonder you hear anything about him outside of the fact that he's the ruler of Turkey. One of the things that Erdogan started doing that won over the MHP, the nationalists, was that he went from basically just being a religious party to also incorporating some of the MHP's platform, which is Pan-Turkism. And so they are reaching out to Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, the different areas like Kazakhstan, and even, which is in Russia, a lot of those little countries that used to be the stands in Russia, right? And areas in Pakistan and Afghanistan, and oh goodness, just all through, the Central Asian area. You have Turkic people that are living there, and that the furthest flung are in well, there's some in Siberia, but the Uyghurs, or Uyghurs, or however you want to pronounce it, Uyghurs. Generally, I would pronounce it Uyghur, Uygur, and they are a Turkic people in western China, Xinjiang actually is the province, and they're there's connections with al-Qaeda that are growing deeper because they are not finding any allies in the world, and then of course you're getting increasingly more of the fundamentalist Muslim fanaticism that grows with the presence of groups like al-Qaeda. And at any rate, from one end to the other, and up into areas through the Balkans where there's still Turks still living, and all around the Black Sea. And you'll find that there are actually one of the issues between Turkey and Russia is the Crimea and the Crimean Tatars. That's a really big bone of contention there, and Turkey was very uncomfortable sitting back during the time in which Russia went into Crimea, and in fact they were screaming at Obama to do something. There were several times in which the Turks were trying to drag the U.S. to war with Russia, and that was one. Another was during the Syrian Civil War, and Erdogan had manufactured a gas attack that was blamed on Assad, but was actually done by members of ISIS or al-Nusra. It was one or the other. I don't remember which. But he was trying to get us involved in that, and instead France was going into Mali, and we sent a detachment of soldiers into Mali. In fact, we got very involved in a lot of action in Africa at this time, and a lot of Obama partisans are, we didn't do anything, man, he's a peace president. Well, guess what? Start looking around. Uganda, Central African Republic, the Congo, all through the region. But we also went into Mali. We sent some troops into Mali to help the French out and stop what they were. I think it was Timbuktu. They were destroying monuments and things from. So that huge connection of Flynn with Erdogan is very worrisome, and there's cause to be concerned about it. And like I say, I have the feeling that is where the angle is. Because I don't see where Flynn was particularly close to the Russians, but he surely was close to Erdogan and his government. So, at any rate, until next time, take care.